Howdy y'all, Brian is Pratt here again. Going to read chapter 26, last full chapter of the Unsuspecting Mage. After that, we have the epilogue, a little bit of a wrap up and setting up for the next book. Now, it ends in a cliffhanger, and when I first wrote the series, I did that intentionally because I thought, well, if I ended in a cliffhanger, people will want to go to the next book. But, as a reader, I don't like cliffhangers. So ever since then, that's always bothered me because, I'm forcing people to do that. And as a reader, I always hated cliffhangers. But at least book 2's out. So if you don't have to wait however long to find out what happens. Like the end of a season, Who Shot JR, for those who remember that, right? And so I don't think I'll ever do that again, not like I did here. But yeah, that was just something I did just because I thought, well, that would make people want to buy the second book. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but that's manipulating them, and that always bothered me. But I'm not going to change it. It is what it is now. I'd have to change a lot to change that. So we're on chapter 26, almost at the end of the book. One more, and then I can get things uploaded. And I haven't quite caught up on the earlier chapters because, as you know, up through chapter 19, I wasn't editing while I was talking to you guys, but now I am. So I'm up to chapter 12 editing. So once I finish those, then I'll upload it and get it in there. All right, so chapter 26, the enemy has breached the city. James and Michael are trying to find a way out, trying to escape this. People are panicking, and that's where we're at now. So, chapter 26 with commentary. The fighting increased as the enemy gained more ground within the city. People fled in every direction. None seemed to know where to go. James and Michael raced through the streets, staying clear of the fighting. Fires within the city cast an eerie glow to the night. The enemy had gained a foothold upon several sections of the walls. Crossbowmen rained down bolts upon the defenders. This is going to be over soon, he told Michael as they paused for a moment, trying to decide the best direction to go. How did they get inside so fast? Michael asked. Everyone said that it would take weeks to breach these walls, maybe longer. Remember the rider who came up while we were waiting to board the boats? James reminded. He said they were poisoned, and I have a good idea who was behind it. Who? Oh, One Eye. When we were looking through the window to the warehouse, he was giving a vial and sacks of coins to someone. My guess is that the vial contained poison that was used on the guards at the gate. Very good, said a voice behind them. Turning, they saw old One Eye standing there with a dozen enemy soldiers, 3 of whom had crossbows aimed straight at them. Greetings again, gentlemen, he said. Move wrong and you'll have a bolt through you. How did you find us? Michael asked. While his men tied their hands behind their backs, he said, fairly easy, actually. I saw you in line at the docks, waiting to board one of those damn boats. I set a man to watch in case you left. When the panic started, it was easy enough to follow and catch you. Why bother with us? James asked. I have my reasons, he replied, and then set off with them in tow toward where the fighting was fiercest. Heading for the east gate, they had to duck down alleys whenever Cardry soldiers, not soldiers of Cardry, but Cardry soldiers. Yeah. I don't need of. I'm trying to reduce ofs as much as I can. I know sometimes they're needful, but for the most part, I'm trying to get rid of them. So, heading for the east gate, they had to duck down alleys whenever Cardry soldiers raced past. Or I could do Cardry defenders. That would work too. I'll say all these soldiers. It was easy for James to use magic to break the bindings that held their hands. When Michael felt his bonds part, he almost let the rope slip to the ground. But fast thinking kept him holding on to it to prolong the illusion that they were still bound. Michael glanced at James, who winked at him, and then continued to follow the captors. A group of defenders emerged at a run from a side street ahead with no effort in trying to maintain formation. It was a complete rout. Enemy soldiers emerged behind them and gave chase. One Eye had them duck into another alley, letting them pass. James glanced into the alley, found that it opened on another street farther down. He indicated for Michael to look back to the main road. When Michael looked, When Michael looked, he saw a small glowing ball rolling toward their hiding place. He closed his eyes and remembered the last time at the inn back in Bern. "What the hell is that?" one of the captors asked. "Shoot it," said One Eye said. When the crossbowman fired a bolt, and when the bolt connected with it, the ball exploded in a brilliant flash of light. James and Michael, having kept their eyes closed, only partially lost their night vision. They shoved out against the men surrounding them, causing them to trip and fall over themselves in their blinded state. James grabbed Michael's shoulders and directed him to the other end of the alley. Behind them arose cries of, "I'm blind, can't see," and One Eye yelling, "Don't let them escape." They raced from the alley and turned down the street, making for the western side of the city. With the enemy pouring through the eastern gate, to the west was their only hope of escape. Dodging around a corner to avoid an approaching group of enemy soldiers, they suddenly found themselves in a market square where a dozen small children had sought refuge. From the other side of the square, a dozen of the enemy appeared. James pulled Michael against the side of the building and into the shadows. He watched the soldiers enter the square and quickly took note of the children. Then, to his horror, they attacked. Without James thinking, reacted, and the ground under the charging soldiers erupted, throwing bodies in every direction. More soldiers entered the square behind the others. Coming out of the shadows, he yells at the children, "Come on, this way!" The children saw him, and the older boys got the younger children moving toward him. "Let's go, move it!" he yelled as the soldiers entered the square, circumventing the hole he had blasted in the street. The soldiers saw the children and raced to catch them, their swords drawn. James reached down, picked up several rocks, and began to fell soldiers, using magic to give the stones speed and accuracy. One after another, the soldiers went down, but still they came, their number steadily increasing. The children finally reached James, and with Michael in the lead, they fled down the side street. At the next crossroad, Michael hesitated, asking, "Which way?" One of the oldest boys said, "This way," pointing to the right, down a street with several tall buildings bordering it. Michael looked at James, who nodded, and they headed in that direction, running as fast as the littlest could go. James realized that the soldiers would catch him if he didn't slow them down, so he yelled to Michael, "Find some place to hide, I'll find you." He stopped and turned to face the oncoming soldiers as Michael led the children away. A bolt flew past his left ear, striking him, shaking him up, but he steeled himself and concentrated on the buildings that bordered the street. When he released the power, the buildings exploded outward from both sides, crashing to the soldiers as they passed between them. The rebel blocked the street, so James, with head throbbing from that last spell, turned and tried to catch up with his friend. He glanced at the outer walls of the city as he ran and saw the enemy now had complete control. The fighting throughout the city diminished as the defenders realized it was a hopeless cause and they began to surrender. James raced down the street when a squad of enemy soldiers emerged from a side street blocking his path. They saw him and one yelled, "Stop! Stay right where you are!" Not heeding the command, James ducked in through the doorway and found himself in a laundry. Racing past the empty tubs, he located the back door and came out in a very small alley wedged between two tall buildings. He ran down the alley as the soldiers entered the laundry behind him in pursuit. Light illuminated the alley from an open doorway up ahead, and the sound of men's laughter came from the other side. He ran toward it and raced inside. There in the middle were two enemy soldiers holding a girl down the floor, while the third tore off the remainder of her clothes. Anger blossomed like a red-hot sun inside him, and he released a surge of power which picked up the men and slammed them into the wall. Their bodies hit with such force they smashed through the thin wall and fell lifeless onto the street on the other side amidst the rubble. The girl looked up and saw James coming toward her. Screaming in terror, she got to her feet and ran out into the night. Okay, I'm going to pause here even though this is a good spot. The whole scene with the two soldiers holding the girl down and anything that has to do with that kind of subject matter always made me really uncomfortable to write. Especially since my mom was editing and still is editing. She does a pretty good job, a lot better than she used to. But, you know, gratuitous sex and violence don't really have a place in my books. Well, violence maybe, but not the sex. And that kind of sex is really bothersome for me. But I did it to create that I wanted the reader to really hate the slavers, really hate them bad, because I don't like slavery. I think it's terrible, and because they could just do what they want to, and people just have to deal with, endure it. So, yeah, I tried not to dwell on that, and I didn't go in too much detail on that. I wrote this one story. It was called Bloody Gwen. It's never been published. Oh man, that one's bad. I can't publish that one there until my mom passes away. Oh, that one's bad. could be the worst story I've ever written, but I think it's really good. This girl gets captured. She's a slave girl, or she's a daughter of a sailor, and so she's in the slave pens. She gets treated horribly in graphic detail, and she ends up killing one of their captors, and then the girls gets freed, and then they torture one to death, and they escape, and the whole thing is about them creating a colony and fighting the slavers and so forth. Yeah, it's bad. It's so bad. Anyway, that is okay. The girl looked up and saw James coming toward her. Screaming in terror, she got to her feet and ran out into the night. James bolted through the hole in the wall just as the pursuing soldiers entered behind him. "There he is," one shouted. He made his way around the dead men lying amidst the rubble and flew down the street, enemy soldiers in hot pursuit. James was winded, with only the fear of dying keeping his feet moving at all. His breath came in gasps, and a pain grew in his side. He saw the soldiers gain on him. The fear of being caught gave him a burst of adrenaline, but it was short-lived. Ahead, the road came to another intersection where a squad of the Empire soldiers marched through. From behind, a pursuing soldier yelled, "Stop him!" to those in the intersection. One of the crossing soldiers saw James approach. One of the crossing soldiers saw James approach, or saw James's approach. Well, I'll put it in an apostrophe. I guess it's fine. He yelled to his commander, and the squad turned into the alley, blocking his only escape. James came to a halt, trapped. Panting for breath, he paused for just a moment to regain some of his strength. The soldiers, seeing James stop, slowed their advance. "Come on," one of the pursuers said, all cocky. "There's no use running. You've got nowhere to go." James directed the magic, causing the ground under his pursuers to explode outward, throwing bodies into the air. From the group coming from the intersection, he heard, "He's a mage!" Two crossbowmen from the group let fly bolts at him as the remaining soldiers rushed forward. With a wave of his hand, he created a barrier that deflected the arrows harmlessly to the side. Concentrating hard, he cast a spell. The effort brought black spots to his eyes, and his pulse pounded from the power being used. Magic flowed into the rubble, littering the alley from when the ground erupted. Pieces were drawn together, and in no time, a stone creature was formed. A body of stone, given life by magic, shuffled toward the soldiers, who struck ineffectively at it with their weapons. It swung its arms, and when it hit, bones shattered. Yep. Enter Rocky. I've used him several different times. I've always liked Rocky. It kind of reminds me of Galaxy Quest when he was on that one planet, and they were and he fought that stone creature. But that's not where this came from, because I had this done. This was a spell that one of my characters created back in the day. Early. I mean, we're talking 90s. So it predates Galaxy Quest. But yeah, Galaxy Quest. Rocky always makes me think of Nesmith fighting the rock creature in Galaxy Quest. And if you have not seen Galaxy Quest, man, you have got to see Galaxy Quest. It's like Alan Rickman. It could be his best role ever. It's awesome. Okay. It positioned itself between the soldiers and James, repulsing every attempt the soldiers made to get past. Realizing that they'd be unable to get to James, they retreated to the intersection, where they disappeared around the corner. The creature followed as far as the alley's entrance before it came to a stop. James's head was pounding. This last spell had taken everything he had and then some. His strength and energy were all but depleted. He leaned against the building and sagged to the ground on the verge of passing out. Spots filled his vision as consciousness waned. The last thing he saw before slipping away was a young man who dropped to the ground and then walked toward him. And that ends this. So, and we all know who that young man is, right? Anybody? Bueller. That's Jiren right there. Inner Jiren. When I wrote it, I had no clue what I was going to do with him. I had no clue that him and Tanakh and Delia being the caravan merchant, and Cassie, and I always feel bad about Cassie, but yeah, I always felt bad about Cassie. But it came into play later in the series, and I like the way it, yeah, her interaction with Tanakh. I really like the interaction, especially later in the series. Are we done with Cassie? Good question. And I would say no, we are not done with Cassie. Cassie will return. Cassie will return, and yeah, she'll return at some point in Travail the Dark Mage near the end. I'm thinking she'll return because I like Cassie. I like that whole thing. And Tanakh, man, his life is just totally tanked and been terrible since what happened to her. But it drove a lot of the story at the end of the Morcyth Saga. And yeah, Cassie. All right, so we're at the end of this chapter. All we have now is the epilogue. I'll do that tomorrow, and then we're done. So let's see. Today's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. So after Pancake and Bacon, because that's Pancake and Bacon Day here at the Pratt household, I will do the epilogue and have that done. Then Saturday, I will begin Shepherd's Quest. Now, if you're still with, me, for those few who are still here, you guys are the ones who are really dedicated to my series, who really enjoy my series, and so I'll let you in on this. According to data, my YouTube post entitled YouTube Monetization, very few people have gone past 2 or 3 minutes. Very few. I think maybe one person, maybe two, has gone the full length. If you haven't, do so. I talked about stuff in there I probably shouldn't have. And so, but I don't want anyone to talk about it, because if people aren't going to watch my whole videos, that they don't, if they're not going to put in the effort and support, they don't need all this extra stuff, right? So that's why that's why I'm saying this at the end of this one. So if you have not seen all the way through the YouTube monetization video, I would suggest you do so. And then if you see it, okay, if you've seen YouTube monetization, or you go back there and say, well, shoot, man, I only watched a couple of minutes because that was just boring stuff about monetization. And it is. It's about 5 minutes. You gotta go 5 minutes in before I'm done with that, and the next 4 minutes is about something totally irrelevant to monetization. And yeah. So, I do have a question. I've been thinking about adding. You see, my YouTube channel is all about books, my books. However, it occurred to me that others might be interested in books that I like, that have really resonated with me, that I absolutely love. And I was thinking about creating another playlist about, books that I recommend, books that I love, and that I could do videos about different books. And if you agree with me, if that's something that would interest you, let me know. In the comments here, say, hey, I'd love to hear about your book, your favorite story, your favorite books, or something like that. Just let me know if that's worth pursuing, and I may do it anyway, because I need a lot of content if I'm going to get 1,000 subscribers. So I may do it anyway. And I started a miscellaneous playlist. And I'm going to do that every month. So like anything that doesn't fit into my main playlist categories, like Grandpa Ralph or author tips, the Unsuspecting Mage, then I'm going to put it into, right now I'm putting it into April 2024. That way I can just keep track of videos, and people, if they want to see everything I've got, they can just do playlists. Just hit a playlist and just listen to it. Hit a playlist, listen to it. Not have to hunt through everything that I've done. I think that'd be interesting. Let me know about that too if you think that's a good idea. Well, whether you do or not, I'll probably keep going. Well, I'm rambling. My girlfriend says, Brian, you know, you're especially on TikTok apparently. You know, you say your message and then you just kind of ramble for a while. You repeat yourself, and you burp a lot. Well, I drink a lot of pop, so that's why I burp. But yeah, I better wind this up or I'll be hearing about it. Anyway, you all have a good Thursday, and we'll finish this up tomorrow. Take care.